Welcome back, you filthy exiles. So, we're looking at the, excuse my face, I've had a bit of an eye problem over the last couple days. 3.16 Balanced Manifesto Part 3. Now, we skipped Part 2, basically the abridged version of Part 2, if you haven't watched every other video that exists out there, is dodge is and evasion is going to be crazy powerful along with regeneration, and I've got a couple of really strong builds in mind that are going to benefit from these changes, but there's some really good changes to DoT, and I like the way that aura changes are coming out. So let's have a read through this and have a look. So anyway, 3.16 expansion coming out, so obviously core defenses and recovery, so there's a lot of changes in that area. Changes to flasking to make that a lot more powerful. But, so I've read through those. What I really like are these auras, curses, and elemental damage over time. Now, I don't really care too much about curses because I've never been crazy about it, but essentially what I take from this is they're attacking aura and curse botting. We could probably thank Empyrean and his crew for that. Bloody tomfoolery. But anyway, so auras and other reservations. Pretty much the take home here from this one, just a really quick abridged explanation, is they're taking auras which previously you could stack infinitely, so you could use all the medium cluster nodes to basically aura stack the shit out and reduce reduction of auras to crazy amounts, and then just have a character that's buffing everyone on the screen crazily. What they've done is they've removed aura reservation reduction with aura reservation efficiency. And this is what I can see is a 2-to-1 scalar from what it previously used to be. And this gives them a better ability to allow craftability of efficiency, and it's sort of like a sliding scale. The higher level you are, the less efficient that you will be in reserving auras, which means that you won't be able to aura bot or as easily aura stack as what you previously once could, with more benefit to those who are powering up auras as opposed to running more auras. So without going into too much detail and reading through that, that's fundamentally what they're doing here. Now, there are a few phantom nerfs in here. For example, Devouring Diadem, there's 25% increased reservation efficiency instead of 20% reduced reservation. Now, if this was the same ratio on that, it would be 40% increased reservation efficiency instead of 25%. So they are somewhat target nerfing some of these items because, for example, last league, Devouring Diadem was a pretty abused item, and it has been for a number of leagues. Everything else looks sort of reasonable. Like there's a little bit of a nerf to Heretic's Veil as well, from what I can see here. But yeah, I'll let you guys have a read through yourself. Basically, it just means, and see this Essence Worm now grants 80% reservation, reduced reservation efficiency versus 40% increased reservation. That's how I can sort of interpret this 2-to-1 ratio from here. It seems to be pretty consistent with the exception of a few balancing items. Same with Skyforth and whatnot. So pretty much they're making auras harder to stack. And there's a few other changes further down here as we read through than what they were before. So you still will be able to get a lot of auras in your build, just not as many. I'm for this. I don't really like the fact that in particular being a solo player, I'm at a complete disadvantage for against people who are in huge parties that are aura and curse botting. So for those of us who, don't have the robust number of friends and all the time, this is actually a welcome change, and it sort of makes you more dependent on yourself and more meaningful for the auras you run on your character yourself. But it's not a deterrent. Like, I'm sure people will still find a way to abuse aura botting. I don't think they're ever going to remove it out of the game in any way, shape, or form. I just think it's going to be more challenging to balance moving forwards. So, second point here, characters specializing in maximizing the power of auras provide an absolute insane amount of damage. This is really true. You walk into a party with like 2 aura bots and you're just doing dumb amounts of damage. So they're removing sources of aura effect from cluster jewels, and they're moving those to small cluster jewels. That's what I read from this. So basically they're simplifying and making that harder to achieve multiple stacking points. Because a lot of builds don't tend to use small cluster jewels unless, you're really trying to push a Fettle in there or something like that. For aura bots, you're not really going to do that. You're going to go for aura reservation reduction jewels. So the aura cluster jewel can now be found on small cluster jewels rather than medium cluster jewels. So they're shifting the target, so you can't have 2 points in there. This makes it more costly and less impactful to stack large numbers of auras. I don't disagree with this. I think this is fair. Cluster jewel notables passive skills have all had aura effect removed. The increased aura effect of auras on you from the Purposeful Harbinger. Purposeful Harbinger has been a problem since it was put into the game. Now only applies to your own auras that affect you. Yeah, this has been a problem node since it was first introduced when the cluster jewels came into the game, and I feel like they're still trying to balance this mistake out. That was the first league. I think that was Delirium League, and that's where like every man and his dog was fucking aura stacking. Master of Command cluster jewel notable passive now grants 10% increased effect from 15. A new cluster jewel notable has been added. Yeah, okay. So they're basically just balancing these down and making them less impactful, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think that nerf is too bad, considering we're getting advantages for rolling solo and life advantages and flask advantages, so I don't think this is a huge thing, though I'm sure there will be a part of the community that will chuck a huge nana about this one. Okay, so cluster jewel notables that grant reduced reservation to specific auras now grant high amounts of reservation efficiency, so that's just pushing it the other way around, so that's fine. That's just doing the same thing in a different way. Added cluster jewel notable passives that grant high amounts of reservation efficiency to specific auras, as well as some other small bonuses, for example. So this looks like Zealotry at 6. So this is targeting Zealotry. I have a build that I'm really keen to see do really well with this, and I think Holy Relic is going to really have some advantages this league with the sheer amount of defensiveness. Holy Relic Guardian is going to be crazy powerful. Jinx Juju, we're not too worried about that one. I have used that in builds before. Usually use that in minion builds because it relies on Spectre's health pool. But there is some buffing going on there. So curses. Characters specializing in maximizing the number of power of curses provided far too exactly. Yeah, same difference, or same story, different mechanic. So basically they've done the same thing. So they're hitting out against all of your curse cluster jewels and small cluster jewels. Curse cluster jewels can now be found on it rather than So they basically they're attacking curses the same way that they're attacking auras, and they're reducing their efficiency to stack, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with any of these changes. I won't go into the detail here because I don't think it's worth going into the detail, but basically curses are getting smacked a bit. DoT's skin now grants hexes from socketed skills, can apply 5 additional curses. Yeah, okay, so it's limited the number of curses when you run DoT's skin, as opposed to ignore curse limit, which is a bit crazy because then you can run absolutely every single curse with no problem whatsoever. Alright, so elemental damage over time. This is one that I want to really focus on because I have 2 builds in mind for this one. So pretty much elemental damage over time. Effects of cold damage, burning, and ignite are 2 dependent on elemental overload. This is true. And elemental equilibrium. Ignites are 2 dependent on ignite damage multipliers on skills, making skills without ignite. No, oh my god, my English. Ignite multipliers too weak to use ignite. So we saw this example. This is basically a pedal back on fire. Was it flame arrow, fire arrow, burning arrow? Sorry. So burning arrow was great in 3.14. Then we hit 3.15. Nerf hammer got dropped. Burning arrow went to shit. I think that this will fix burning arrow. So greatly improve the base strength of ignite, burning, and cold damage over time. Vortex Witch, Vortex Occultist, is going to fucking pop off this league. We're going to see every man their dog playing Vortex Occultist. I'm going to be playing goddamn Vortex Occultist. Creeping Frost, Vortex Occultist, and we'll talk about that as we go down. So they're increasing fire and cold dot, and they're reducing the effectiveness of elemental overload and elemental equilibrium but increasing the power of your DoT skills as an overall. So they're only going to provide a slight advantage to your skills, but the skills themselves are going to be more powerful. And this is fucking great, because this means that you can really get into those skills early on, level up quickly, and they're going to have a nice power spike throughout the game. So Player Ignite now inherently deals 150% more damage. Previously 50% of base damage over foot. Now that's a fucking two and a half times increase in power for Ignite. So Fireball, Ignite Fireball is in. We're going to be playing Inquisitor this league. Or we might be able to play Burning Arrow Witch again. Ignite Burning Arrow Witch. So I think those two builds are going to make their way back in. This is a huge change in that mechanic. Cold Dot. Creeping Frost is going from 8 to now deals 18.4 base at level 1 from 16.7, with the top end up by nearly 800 DPS. So that's, again, an insane increase to that damage modifier, and that makes that a pretty enticing thing to be running. Cold Snap we don't worry about because you use it as a utility. Wintertide, never been a big Wintertide player. Val Cold Snap, same thing. Vortex. So Vortex is going up 42 at low end, 38. So this is going up again by a huge margin of difference. Now deals 116 base cold per second at gem level 1, up from 106. And then it's getting like, what's that? A 800 DPS increase at the upper end per, at level 20. So this is going to scale. It now has a critical strike chance of, so they've dropped crit on a DoT skill. So honestly, Vortex, I'm going to put this in my curation for league start, because Vortex is going to be fucking aces this league. It's going to be great. Burning skill. So Scorching Ray was never a great skill, and you were only using a Righteous Fire. It looks like they're addressing the Righteous Fire problem. So Righteous Fire now deals 39 base from 35. So this is going up by nearly 1,000 DPS on the upper end at level 20. So 35. It also now deals 35% of life and energy shield as base fire damage per second, up from 20%. So if that's a 15% modifier increase to the damage output of RF, which means RF is going to be another huge build for this league. Firewall was really good in 3.14, and it's getting significantly buffed again in 3.16. So 3.16 is going to be viable. Infernal Legion, I played with this one this last league, and it was absolutely hot crap. And this is getting a buff by about 700 DPS in the upper end too. So that could potentially be really powerful if your minions, if you stack enough HP on like zombies, and run Infernal Legion zombies, which is what I was going to do, and I got bored with it because it was just a nightmare to level up. So Flame Wall might be coming back. RF definitely coming back. That's a huge increase in advantage, both with Scorching Ray and RF, so we can expect to see really good RF builds. Or open up older build guides, because I think it's going to be fucking awesome. Vortex is going to be off the chain with Creeping Frost and Vortex. I would say Occultist is going to be really good. And I'd say most likely Burning Arrow, but here we go. Many skills that have had Ignite Multiplier have had that multiplier removed. The skill has been balanced to compensate for this. So certain skills have been rebalanced due to the change to base Ignite damage, taking into account whether they're able to take full advantage of Elemental Overload now. Note that the examples below do not include Elemental, so that's just irrelevant. Fireball. Fireball just has flat 25% chance to ignite at all skill levels. That's somewhat balanced in between. Ignite with the skill is now 33% higher as an overall. That's pretty good. Bale Fireball, Discharge, Flame Blast. Flame Blast might actually come back. Previously, because the Ignite damage shown is 75% higher at 10 stages. This is, I don't know if this will come back. Flame Blast used to be big, but it's just not that good anymore. Anomalous Firestorm. Firestorm skill now. Ignite. So we could run Ignite Firestorm, and that could actually do quite a lot of damage as well. I wasn't really into the fire burst trend, but it looks like fire burst is being rebalanced back up, which is good. I won't go into Hex Blast and Doom Blast. These are not my areas especially. I've never been a big chaos damage over time player, and or curse player or a Hex Blast plus player. Looks like they've increased Penance Brand, which is nice. Explosive Concoction's a real problem. So they've somewhat increased that. Armageddon Brand, so this has been buffed as well, from what I can see. I actually have a really good Armageddon Brand character, so if this is the case, I've actually got a build for that, Armageddon Brand. I'll have a look at this one, but Armageddon Brand's doing a lot more damage. Base Ignite changes. Yeah, Shattering Steel and Ignite don't really go together. Explosive Arrow. Maybe, I don't know. Explosive Arrow doesn't really pull me in. It wasn't great when it was a good character. Sentinels of Purity now have 40% less life because of the base Ignite damage change. Ignite with this skill is now 50% higher when using Death Wish skill from More of Mischief. So what are they saying? Sentinels of Purity. We could run Exploding Sentinels of Purity. That's what that sounds like, because that's what the More of Mischief does. That's interesting. I don't know how that's going to work. Maybe Ignition Sentinels of Purity? I don't know. Frostbomb now deals... Frostbomb's a utility skill, so... So the Elemental Overload Keystone passive now gives more hit and ailment damage to skills if they crit in the last 8 seconds. This means you can't use a second rapidly hitting skill, making a small amount of critical chance. Investment much more important to taking. Okay, so you want to use slowest. They're slow again. They're slow on the pace of the game, but they're making you more powerful in the process of that. So less hits, more power with less hits. That's pretty cool. Elemental Equilibrium now applies 25% exposure of elements. Strong exposure rather than a huge damage. Okay. Pure elements determine what changes. Okay, so like frost minions may throw this out of whack. Move the Elemental Equilibrium Keystone to the Ranger section. That's an interesting change. Okay, so you might be able to use it for Wild Strike. That's really interesting. Not too worried about this. This is just DoT over time, so they're making changes to DoT over time multipliers. So they're basically, but there's a lot of buffs that I can see, like damage over time multiplies on influence gloves and amulets now up to 20% from 16%. So I'm going to say that, yeah, I'm going to say Cold Dot is going to be a really, really good build. Oh, here we go, Burning Arrow. Burning Arrow is too complex for a level 1 skill. Alright, cool. Redesign the skill without a secondary stacking burning effect, but with high added fire damage against ignited enemies. No longer has a stacking burning effect. Okay, so alright, I take back my words. They're gonna rail Burning Arrow because it's too powerful. Up to previously, nowadays 3 to 4 fire attacks. Chill. 1. Okay, so they're slowing down fire. Okay. So potentially they're nerfing Burning Arrow because these changes really buff the shit out of Burning Arrow. So they got to bring that one back down to reality. Ignite builds don't have a way to focus their damage on bosses, forcing balance to be the same for clear speed damage and boss damage. Change flame stream. So introduce a new attack based mechanic to be able to deal much more burning damage to targeted enemy. Okay, so Flame Surge is changing. Okay, so we want to stress that from the above list from the last 2 days aren't final. There are plenty of that. Okay, so there's a lot of really good changes here. I'm not against them. I think they're not bad. I'm definitely going to say that bloody Vortex Witches are going to be powerful, and Fireball... what was it? Fireball Inquisitors are very likely going to be extremely powerful this league. Burning Arrow, we'll see what they come out with, because it's going to be interesting how they change that. I'm only speculating here as to what is going to be powerful, because we don't have patch notes yet, and you know, I'm not releasing curation videos until patch notes come out. After last season, that was just, or last league, that was just a fucking tragedy. But this is a good change in the right direction. It's really powering the character up, giving us a lot more defense, and it's giving us the ability to smack with ailments, not just the enemies, and giving us a combating sort of defensive layer against them. So I think this is actually some quality changes in the works. Anyway, if this video is insightful, like and sub, and stay tuned for more content. This week's going to get pretty hectic. There's going to be a fair bit of shit going on with all the new stuff that's coming out, and obviously the announcements for POE. Anyway, until next time, like and sub, and bye.